Hey there everyone, Video Game Cabinet here, and tonight we are back with a review of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, otherwise known as Sonic 06. This past week, I finally played Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 for the Xbox 360, completing all three of the lead characters' campaigns, as well as the last episode campaign to witness the full story's ending. I had heard that Sonic 06 is regarded as the worst Sonic game ever made, but I honestly was not prepared for the utter train wreck I was about to experience. Hammered by technical issues, slippery controls, and a horrendous camera, Sonic 06 is indeed one of the worst games of all time. The sad thing is that there was potential for a good game buried in here somewhere, but an obviously rushed development cycle destroyed any semblance of enjoyment in this absolute atrocity. Sonic 06 was meant to be a fresh start for the Blue Hedgehog on the 7th generation hardware. The confusing story opens with Sonic rescuing Princess Elise from Dr. Robotnik, and later involves the Shadow and Silver Hedgehogs as they uncover a plot involving a giant flame monster known as the Iblis that will burn up the world in the future, or something like that. The awkward romance developed between Sonic and the human princess is the cherry on top to what seems to be an attempt to give the kid-friendly franchise a more serious epic tone. The gameplay is where Sonic 06 really falls apart. You start out exploring a metropolitan city as you unlock individual levels to run through. There are optional side missions scattered around the city, but these are pointless as the reward for doing them is simply earning more rings, and the punishment for failure is a series of long loading screens before you can try again. Sonic 06 is brimming with frequent load screens that can last over 20 seconds apiece. I only did a few of the side missions here and there, and mostly focus on just getting through the main levels to complete the story campaigns, as these were torture enough. Sonic's campaign is riddled with problems. For those of you who have played Sonic 06 at least a little bit, you instantly know how hypersensitive the controls are. But you have no idea how infuriating things can be until you actually try to complete the levels and march through the entire game from start to finish. Every time Sonic starts picking up speed, you will get knocked off course by some glitch or cheap shot from an unseen enemy right into lava or a bottomless pit. When you try to barely correct his course, the finicky controls will either tilt him too much or they won't respond at all. The camera also does whatever the hell it wants to in Sonic 06, constantly swinging around in the opposite direction as you fight to control it with the analog stick more than you fight with the actual enemies. And the endless number of glitches throughout are absolutely embarrassing, popping up more and more the faster you go. Speed is something to be feared in Sonic 06, not exhilarated by as you were in previous Sonic games. Shadow plays similar to Sonic, but occasionally rides vehicles. I thought the vehicle segments were kind of fun, albeit brief. Outside of that, Shadow's campaign is just as bad as Sonic's. Once he starts moving fast, or a lot of enemies are on screen, all the same problems with the twitchy controls, stupid glitches, and temperamental camera come back into play. Adding to the aggravation, the levels in this game are quite long, with multiple sections connecting one after the other. There is no way to stock up on extra lives outside, so you enter every one of them with the standard 5 right at the start and are not able to save until all segments are finished. It is extremely difficult to make it through an entire area unscathed from all the unforeseeable issues and not lose all your lives by the time you finally get to save your progress. You will die repeatedly and have to restart everything after a series of loading screens over and over until you are ready to rage quit. Sonic 06 is the most frustrating video game I have played outside of Superman 64. The one sigh of relief is that most of the boss battles are surprisingly not too rough to get through, and begin with a save point right beforehand. Silver's campaign begins with a small glimmer of hope after the sheer disasters that were Sonic's and Shadow's campaigns. I thought the telekinesis abilities were interesting and mixed up the gameplay a bit, at least at first. Silver's fights with standard enemies go on way too long, and picking up and throwing the same respawning boxes over and over gets old after a while. And despite the more methodical pace that would prevent many of the bugs and glitches seen at high speeds, the camera is still as problematic as ever. Much of the time, I had to just guess where enemies were when I threw objects at them. And towards the end of Silver's campaign, you are treated to a couple of mandatory side missions involving an escort and a timed 5-minute fight that are as irritating as you can imagine. While boring and monotonous, Silver's campaign was not quite as painful as Sonic's and Shadow's were. So maybe Sonic 06 would end on a slightly less negative note? Wrong. The fourth and final campaign is the biggest nightmare of them all. This is one last hurrah with all the game's side characters, but you have to avoid giant gravity balls that pull you in, exacerbating the god-awful controls. Beating the opening segment of the final campaign in Sonic 06 is one of the hardest feats I have ever accomplished in a video game, and it was all due to poor game design. Tails and the robot were especially terrible to handle, but Silver's segment has the most unfair and abysmal platforming I have ever seen. There is so much wrong with Sonic 06, it is impossible to write everything in one single review. Finishing this was like pulling teeth. Once in a blue moon, when the controls and bugs decide to cooperate and you manage to get into a decent flow, it offers a brief glimpse of what could have been. Sonic 06 had potential to be a quality Sonic game with its lush graphics and exotic environments, but everything comes crashing down as soon as you pick up the controller and start moving. I rate Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 a 1.5 out of 10. And that is my review. Yeah, this one was real bad. I've given ones to 1.0, which is the lowest score I can give on my scale of 1 to 10. I've given that to Superman 64 and Ride to Hell Retribution that I completed in the last year or two. But, yeah, this one, oh man, this was just so much like broken gameplay, just finicky controls that like either decided that they wanted to like swing too fast or sometimes not respond at all. Just, oh my God, just a train wreck of a game. This is a train wreck. That's how I would, if I could just find one or two words to describe Sonic 06, it's a train wreck. It was hard to write in my review, but there's specific segments in Sonic's campaign where the camera kind of goes a little bit low and behind him, and you're meant to move extra super fast, and where you're chasing after something. And those segments where like it goes extra super speed, like if you jump, you can't like control where he's gonna jump mid-air, and it leads to so much frustration and trial and error, and it's just an unavoidable deaths, and it's so bad. And the crazy thing is, it's a beautiful looking game, and some of the music, you die so much and have to hear the same songs over and over again that it gets annoying. But there's some music, actually, particularly in the final boss fight of the last episode campaign, it's actually pretty good. It's funny, the final boss fight is kind of epic, and it's in a big epic finish for really one of the worst games of all time. This game really is an anti-classic. You know, if Superman and Ride to Hell are anti-masterpieces, which they are, the Sonic the Hedgehog is an anti-classic or an anti-near masterpiece. Because there's a good game buried in there somewhere. You know, it just, man, this game was just rushed with the controls that just, and the camera that just decides to work when it wants to. And man, I swear to God, when I played as Tails, you don't play as Tails too often, but when you do, the camera just does whatever the hell it feels like. And he runs out of flight stamina so quickly. And the robot guy that you play as a little bit in the final last episode campaign, and I think a little bit in Shadow's campaign, that robot, he controls like ass. And when you're in the final episode, his segment, and the gravity balls are just doing their thing and altering gravity and everything else, and it makes the camera and the controls an absolute wreck. I mean, my God, there is, because it's so bad, kind of like Ride to Hell and Superman, like you can't help but kind of be amused. And, just like with those games, there is a bit of, quote, depth to mastering the glitches and either learning how to avoid them, which involves, quote, skill, or just, strategy and getting the glitches to work for you or whatever, kind of like Superman. So, if you secretly love bad, like I, sort of do, you definitely get some amusement out of this. I can't deny that it's been a lot of fun seeing how bad this is and writing about it and sharing it with you guys. I mean, this game really, really is really, really bad. I'm not going to give it a 1 because, like I said, there's some stuff about there that it is like a beautiful looking game, that there was potential for something good here. Even with the awkward cringe romance with Sonic and the human Princess Elise. But yeah, this was definitely something memorable for how bad it was. But anyways, those are my thoughts. 1.5, that is the score that Sonic 06 deserves. 1.5 out of 10. And have a good night.